Why would I need to pay for Scrub if I could do it with ChatGPT?
Maybe we have a slightly better reputation than OpenAI, you could say, at least in that industry, right? I don't personally really like ChatGPT that much. I think it's a bit over-enthusiastic.
Navigate the challenges of keeping the data safe and private.
Our input can be quite spiky, actually, because one user could send 100,000 rows of data in one go. So that's only one request.
You're also taking around 80% of the jobs in data science.
I think that there will be changes in the jobs that people do, and hopefully for the better. Elements of human in the loop. We're working all the time to reduce that as much as possible. Big GPUs are not so easy to buy and to run and make.
All these skills that we acquired, it seems they became redundant.
A few years ago, people didn't really trust these models. They still don't fully trust them all the time.
Joining me today is Alex Ley, co-founder of Scrub AI. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
So could you share a little bit about your background and about your company?
So yeah, a little bit about me. I love new technology. I'm really sort of detail oriented. I love learning new things. And yeah, I really enjoy kind of finding the limits of systems and building products that are really fast and performant and really excite users. That's what really excites me. And I actually studied a bachelor's and master's in natural science. So I have a bit of a life science background. But really, I found my passion for software engineering in my master's project. I had to control a benchtop instrument. And I had to learn how to program in order to control it, in order to collect my results and do my experiments. And I basically fell in love with it then and haven't really stopped since. So I spent most of that summer after university reading books, practicing online, building, toy little applications, things like that. And yeah, I've always gravitated towards software in the last years. I did work at a small biotech company and a large Fortune 500 life science company in various roles, but the software roles, specifically software product management, and any opportunity I had to build little tools, automate my job, try and automate other people's jobs, help people out. They were the most enjoyable parts, and those are the things I kept coming back to. So I also did an MBA in 2018 to 2020. And shortly after this, a good friend of mine from university, Andrew, one of my co-founders, called me up with my other co-founder, Nicola, and basically said, we've had a really good idea, we think, for a company that combines Andrew's background in machine learning and AI and Nicola's background in insurance in order to clean data for insurance companies. They said, do you want to get involved and help us? And I said, yes, definitely. And so, yeah, that's a few years ago now, and we're still doing it, still enjoying it, and still going strong.
Is this amidst the release of ChatGPT and when generative AI became popular?
So Andrew was working with sort of in the NLP space, natural language processing space, from about 2016. So sort of you could say pre-ChatGPT or before it was. So when we started the company in 2020, large language models that had been released, such as BERT, that was kind of a big paper in 2016, 2017, and lots of other models around that time, T5 and things like that. But it's not what it is today, and it's definitely pre-ChatGPT. So yeah, it's been really exciting to watch the technology evolve over the last few years as well. There's always a little bit of magic to it when something new comes out. A new model comes out, a new modality comes out, a new technology comes out, and you're really excited to try it and push it. One of the things about working in this space does mean that you end up pushing these kind of systems to their limit a little bit, finding the edge cases, the rough corners, and start to realize, there are some limitations with them. But, the field has been advancing so quickly in the last few years that another model will come out and a little bit of that magic comes back again and again.
So to be clear here, so you started the company at around the time when generative AI became popular. And the question here is like, are you plugging in on the APIs of OpenAI or using an open source model, or like how you're using generative AI in your company?
Yeah, so we are almost exclusively using open source models. Several reasons for that, but the problem that we're solving is going from kind of semi-structured or unstructured data into structured data. So the output is quite fixed in some ways. In other ways, not. But in general, it's a lot more fixed than really open-ended tasks. And so we actually use a lot of non-generative NLP models. So BERT for classification tasks, for named entity recognition tasks, things like that, in order to generate a database schema, essentially, data that is validated against the database schema. But we also do use a lot of generative models as well, both encoder decoder models and decoder only models. But we actually use a lot of those at training time in order to generate data to then train often smaller models on, which are better at producing really strict output.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because my master's degree, I just graduated in a master's in information systems, and my concentration was on data analytics and business intelligence. And we used to do a lot of data cleaning in all the projects and most of the courses. And I became proficient at R and Python to just, use code to clean up the data. And now, all these skills that we acquired, it seems they became redundant almost, where, I can plug in my data to your system and scrub AI, and then, the output will be perfectly clean data. Is this how it works?
Yes, more or less. So a lot of data science tasks are sometimes described as 80% data cleaning and then 20%, real work. What we really aim to do is to handle that sort of repetitive data ingestion task and get the data into a format that you can actually do something fun with, something useful with. Right now, we're quite focused in the insurance industry, but the sort of vision of the company is that you can give us any unstructured or semi-structured data, and we'll give you out into a defined structured database schema.
I mean, this brings me to the next natural question: is that insurance companies are heavily regulated. There's a ton of privacy concerns, and how do you navigate those regulations? How do you navigate the challenges of keeping the data safe and private, and prevent any breaches?
Yeah, so it's very important in this industry to make sure that you can maintain the utmost data security, privacy, the best sort of practices that you can possibly achieve. It's definitely taken us a little bit of time initially to gain that trust and to get everything that we needed to get in place in order to satisfy the requirements of the client. So things like ISO 27001, setting up an information security management system, making sure we had all the security measures in place that we could have in order to reassure them that we were going to really watch over their data and protect it and treat it as carefully as possible. It's also a big reason why we use open source models as well, because this means that we know exactly where the models are, where the data is, where it's being processed, and we have full control of it. Whereas something like a third-party API is much harder to control, much harder to guarantee, and you're essentially passing over that security responsibility to them. And a lot of people in the insurance industry are not happy or not willing to take that risk. So this is another big reason for our choice in technology.
Walk me through an example where what kind of data do you deal with within the insurance industry? The reason I ask you is because I happen to work in the insurance industry before, briefly, but a good 2 years there as a CMO. So I had to deal with a lot of sales data, business intelligence. We used to run some BI on sales. And what kind of data, if a vendor at the time when I was there, what kind of services would you offer me, and what kind of data would I benefit from your work?
Yeah, so what we currently sort of specialize in or focus on is property insurance data. So a big Fortune 500 company has lots of offices and buildings, maybe distribution centers, warehouses, all sorts of different buildings all over the world that they may rent some of them, but they may also own some of them. They often need an insurance quote, right, to protect all of their assets against different catastrophes, different events. So it would be possible for them to go to every country and try and get an individual insurance policy, but that is it's a lot of hard work and a lot of legwork. So what they often end up doing is going to a specialist market such as Lloyd's of London for one policy that covers all of the buildings. Export or somehow get a list of all of their properties, often in Excel, because when there is no data standard, Excel kind of becomes the de facto in a lot of financial services, financial institutions. So they will then send over this Excel file to the insurer. and they would have to clean the data or standardize the data in order to be able to do their value add, which is trying to understand the risk of those properties and how much therefore to price the insurance at. So we help those insurers clean the data, standardize the data into a database schema, into a known format, so that they can do the part of the job that they actually want to do. So yeah, with your example, without knowing more details, I would assume that there would be some room for improvement in terms of data standardization, data quality, trying to get data from system A into system B, or from no system into system A, from Excel, things like that. So that's the kind of stuff that we really specialize in and focus on, almost like a silent partner in some ways, just working for you all the time, trying to get your data into the best possible state that we can, so you can do the most important work.
Are humans in the loop, or is it a SaaS model? Like, is it like a software that I can plug in? I pay subscription fee a month, and I will upload my Excel sheets, and then the output would be a standardized schema.
Yes, it's kind of both in a way. Not on our side, but it's a SaaS subscription model where yes, you can upload your spreadsheets, your data, and get the data in a standardized format. We do also offer the ability for the user to be a human in the loop and to correct data and to make some choices about the data. And that mostly stems from the fact that data itself is coming from someone else, like the Fortune 500 company that wants to be insured, or a broker, or someone else. And the actual source of data could be the problem sometimes. So we can clean the data to the best of our ability, or the best of the machine learning model's ability. Sometimes if the fundamental data is incorrect, you're not going to be able to fix everything. A really concrete example would be if the address is sort of in the US, in Florida, but it has a postcode, a zip code that looks like it's in Georgia. Sometimes you can deduce which part of the address is wrong, because if 5 out of 6 parts are correct and 1 is wrong, it's most likely that one part. But when you start to get towards 3 and 2, right, or 3 and 3, it's really hard to know which 3 are correct and which 3 are wrong. And so then we will flag that to the user and tell them, hey, we think the original data is incorrect. We don't. So there is an element of human in the loop. We're working all the time to reduce that as much as possible, because we don't really want you to spend your time reviewing the data. We want you to just, be a sort of hands-free solution where you upload the data, or we automatically ingest it, receive it from some other sort of API or some other interface, and then you just receive it and get on with your day and do the most impactful work that you can. The way that we've approached it, I think, has also been quite good, because a few years ago, people didn't really trust these models. They still don't fully trust them all the time. And so by showing them the data and making it less of a black box and explaining, we have this address, we think these 3 are right and these 3 are wrong, or vice versa, can you please confirm? It also has added a layer of sort of trust and reputation to the product.
If I was to play devil's advocate a little bit and compare what you're doing with the data to a regular ChatGPT user, as you know, OpenAI have a data analysis kind of module integrated within ChatGPT, and I often use it for low risk data. You could upload an Excel sheet and ask it to analyze it, get you graphs, get you even cleaner data. So what is the difference? Like, why would I need to pay for Scrub if I could do it with ChatGPT?
Yeah, so the data sort of security is definitely one element that these insurance companies don't typically want to send their data off to a third party. They don't trust it, and they kind of need to safeguard the data that they have and the data of their clients as much as possible.
But aren't you a third party? Like, you are also a third party.
Yeah, maybe we have a slightly better reputation than OpenAI, you could say, at least in that industry, right? So there's definitely an element of that. But ultimately, I think the kind of data that you are uploading, I would assume, is the kind of data that many users might upload. Whereas this insurance-specific data, with just an example, could be long descriptions about the construction material of the building. We've spent years training machine learning models to be really, really accurate at taking that free text construction description and converting it into industry standard codes for this known database schema, this known output format. I don't think ChatGPT can do that. Not since the last time I saw it.
No, that's good to know, and that's probably where the biggest value added, or the main selling point, I would say. The second question is also real-time data. So a lot of the systems, they output data in real time, and a lot of these business intelligence applications are keen to stress on real time. So could your system plug in other systems for real time data cleaning?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, definitely. We do all of our sort of data cleaning asynchronously, so that just basically means that you get some sort kind of identifier, right, for the asynchronous task, some kind of unique ID. You can ask for the progress of that task, and we will give you a percentage of progress. Depending on the volume of the data, that is not completely instantaneous, because these big large language models, and we have tens of them. Big GPUs, and they do require some time to do the computation. Our scaling problem is quite different to a normal auto scaling problem that a normal website would have. Our input can be quite spiky, actually, because one user could send 100,000 rows of data in one go. So that's only one request. There may be just one request in a minute, for example, but the volume of data is huge. So we have to handle that asynchronously and sort of batching and things like that to try to get it as performant as possible. The machine is always available, right? The servers are always running. So it could be 2 a.m. and someone could send a really large spreadsheet, and we can clean it and get it back to them. We also have the ability to sort of add a webhook at the end when something is finished. So that can also trigger another part in the workflow, kind of a sort of events-driven system, so to say. Like I said earlier, our dream is kind of to be like a silent partner, sort of a Stripe in a way, right? Maybe lots of people on the outside wouldn't even know that we exist, but we're just working behind the scenes all the time, cleaning the data, getting it into the system so that you can do something more useful with the data.
Very cool. Just a quick question about cloud, or I'm sure it's cloud. Yeah, your servers are in the cloud, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Okay.
We use AWS. There are some challenges with that, with risk in the insurance industry and in broader financial services. But I think that a lot of companies do accept that these big GPUs are not so easy to buy and to run and maintain yourself. So they do accept that that's the most sort of practical, feasible way to get these really large language models to perform in a decent amount of time. Obviously, if one of our clients really wanted to host it themselves, we would think about it, we would discuss it, but we've had those discussions in the past, and when they start to look at the cost of the servers to get the GPUs to run it themselves locally, and the latency and things like that, it just doesn't really become as attractive anymore. And AWS has a pretty good reputation in terms of uptime and security. Obviously, there's a lot of the security that's down to us to configure it properly and to set it up properly, but they do give you all the tools to do that.
Now, I wonder, as a marketing professional myself, how are you approaching marketing for your company? Obviously, you're in a B2B space, and I've had a look on your website. So when it comes to marketing, what is the highlights of the strategy that you're using?
I would say up until maybe this year, we didn't really have too much of a strategy on that side. Me and my co-founders, Andrew and Nicola, are quite, I guess, reserved is one way to say it. Maybe we don't shout until we feel like we really have something to shout about, let's say. So we really had our heads down for the first few years, just trying to make the product as awesome as possible. Trying to get through all of these security requirements for all the companies, build the reputation in the market that we needed to gain the trust to actually start to win clients. So we've sort of been quite product-led, I guess is one way to say it, but also just head down, trying to build the best thing we can. And it's actually this year where we thought, okay, now we're at a position where we're really happy with the product ourselves. Now it's time to shout about it. So we actually just hired our first marketing hire in January this year. Julie, and she's been fantastic so far. So anything that you see on our website and our social media is because of that. So we're just trying to highlight what we do, get our name out there, go to more events, go to more conferences. Like I said, we feel like it's a time to shout about it now. We're really proud of the product and the platform that we've built. So it's all about content, all about trying to, get your name out there, make people aware of you, try and speak to the right people. And I think we've been really successful with word of mouth so far. So just trying to leverage that as much as possible. Your biggest attractors can also be current customers telling their colleagues, ex-colleagues, friends, people they know in the industry that, yeah, we use Scrib and we're really happy. So that's something we're also trying to drive as as organically as possible.
I really like that you're focusing on the insurance industry, but in terms of expanding to new industries, what would be your next top priority?
We've kind of always had the vision that we would be able to ingest any sort of semi-structured, unstructured tabular data and give it you into your database schema, your structured output format. We're not quite there yet. We still have to train lots more models to make it as general as possible. But we've definitely sort of landed and expanded within insurance. So we started with one sort of particular line of business and one sort of focus area within insurance. So that was commercial or open market property insurance within Lloyd's of London. So it's a sort of a niche within a niche in a way. But now that we've gained some traction there, we're starting to expand to other lines of business, other types of business, or the other geographies within insurance. And I think the natural next step is broader financial services. So we have had some initial conversations with some companies outside of insurance within the broader financial services industry. Some of the people do know each other as well, because a lot of the banks will lend money to the insurance companies to help them have the capital available to underwrite this risk. So London's a great place for it as well. And ultimately, it's going to be the market or the company that has the biggest burning desire to use us and that we want to partner with. So I wouldn't say we found that person yet, but when we do, we will definitely try to do the best we can to expand the product to continue to be able to handle more data.
From my due diligence, I looked at your website and stuff. If I didn't have this conversation with you, I wouldn't even know that you're specialized in insurance business or in insurance industry. Is there a specific reason in your strategy why you don't have this as a part of your unique selling proposition or your value proposition, that we help insurance clean data as the main kind of positioning of your company?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a balance between we have been really focused within one specific industry and even within a niche within an industry, because we don't want to boil the ocean and we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. And I think that's been quite well received by the market, and I think it's reflected in the product. But we do have this broader vision for the future. We do want to be sort of a data ingestion engine for broader financial services. So we're trying to strike a balance between telling people what we do now and telling people what we want to do in the future, and not getting stuck in a way, within one industry, getting pigeonholed, getting labeled as the insurance data cleaners and nothing else. We have bigger plans than that. So we try to leave ourselves, let's say, leave some wiggle room for that.
You mentioned earlier that 80% of data scientists' job is to clean data. And with your system, you're basically taking that mundane task away. But does that mean that you're also taking around 80% of the jobs in data science? Is this a fair thing to say, or no?
Yes, so I think jobs will definitely evolve in many industries with the use of artificial intelligence, generative AI. I think it is changing how all of us work already. So I think that there will be changes in the jobs that people do, and hopefully for the better. Rather than spending 80% of your time or 50% of your time manually cleaning data, doing really mundane activities, you can focus on pricing the risk better in insurance. You can focus on, operating efficiencies in other markets. You can focus on better, statistical analysis in data science projects, whatever it is. Data cleaning is, it's not the most glamorous task in the world. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but someone's got to do it. And so we're happy for it to be us, and take that away from people else, so they can just focus on more value activities that stimulate their brain, that make them more excited to get out of bed in the morning. I think there are things that machines do really well, and there are things that humans do really well, and I think we should play to our strengths and augment our abilities with machines. So I don't think there's going to be an exodus of jobs. I don't think people have to worry. I think it's just going to change how we work.
So do you think if you have like a little brother who wants to get into data science, would you still recommend to go all in with that field, or would you probably advise to switch into other areas that are less affected by artificial intelligence?
I mean, I still think that the top performers in almost every industry are going to be fine, right? It's going to be the sort of lower performers or the lower value activities that people are doing that they probably really shouldn't be doing, that, you know, we as a society should probably, you know, rethink how we do things and try to focus on, you know, more value add activities, more engaging work. So I think data science will just evolve as well as many other industries will, and ultimately somebody has to still build the models, somebody has to do the research, somebody has to write. Well, I still think somebody has to write the code around these models to build a product, because even though we have tens of models in production to clean the data and to serve our clients, there is a lot of stuff around it that's not machine learning, right? You've got to get the models in the cloud, you've got to run them efficiently, you've got to manage users and permissions and security and data, and there are so many other things around the product. So I think there's so much room to continue to have a lot of work to do for a lot of software engineers and a lot of data scientists. I just think that the type of work we do will change. The sort of monotonous element of it might change. Some examples are, I use GitHub Copilot almost every day now, but I don't actually accept the suggestions it makes very often for the code. But what I do use a lot is the option to automatically generate documentation. So I write the function, then I use the right-click option in VS Code with GitHub Copilot, ask it to write the documentation for me. It does the first pass. It's actually very good if you've written a good function. It's very good at writing the documentation for me, something that I didn't really used to enjoy. I just tweak it a little bit if needed. And that for me is a far better experience than what I used to have, because I used to have to write the code and then write the documentation, which I didn't enjoy too much. So now I focus on the part I really do enjoy, the part I think I excel at, and let the tool do the mundane task. The same with tests. You have to be a little bit careful here. Don't just blindly accept the tests that it suggests, but a lot of the testing is boilerplate code, repetitive, mundane things. I don't really enjoy that. And so I get GitHub Copilot to do that. But I don't really accept the suggestions it makes for the actual code itself, because A, I don't think they're very good, and B, that's the part I enjoy the most.
Staying with that line of tools, as an executive, what are other AI tools that you use on a regular basis or part of your arsenal?
So given the company size, I still do write quite a lot of code. I review a lot of code. So I use GitHub Copilot a lot when I'm developing. It's also quite good to have, there's a chat function of it as well. So it's very similar to Chat GPT. I think it's based on GPT 4.5 Turbo now, so it's very similar. So I use that a lot. I also use Gemini a fair amount for kind of first drafts of things. If I want to make a presentation, I have ideas, I try to just get them down as fast as possible. Ask Gemini to come up with a sort of an agenda, not an agenda, so sort of an overview of the slides, what information I might put in each slide, and then I go from there. Anyone who knows me well will know that I struggle to be concise. I'm quite detailed, and so I sometimes write something and it's quite long, and it's quite difficult to write it short. And I could spend time rewriting it, but one thing that really works for me is just to put it into Gemini, ask it to condense it. Again, it's not perfect. I still do some stuff to it, but it just helps get there faster. I don't personally really like Chat GPT that much. I think it's a bit over enthusiastic. It uses a bit too many superlatives and things like that. I probably could prompt it to give it the style that I want, but Gemini tends to work out the box a little bit better for me. So I tend to use that. I am sort of always looking for new tools. So we're just about to try the Slack AI. So we use Slack as our sort of Microsoft Teams equivalent communication tool, and they've just released a new Slack AI which helps to summarize channels, summarize conversations, things like that. We're just about to try that. We're also looking at some AI to help generate kind of, again, first drafts of presentations and things like that. But yeah, those are the kind of core ones for me at the minute. A lot of the others I find are a bit, that they just don't solve a big enough need. They're not core enough. They're just a bit, nice to haves, things like that. So I haven't really used too many, or they haven't stayed with me for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, like as a podcaster, like I do a lot. There are many tools that take like a long form video and will generate like reels, like small short clips from that long form. And whenever I use them, they're off. They're really off. They don't know how to cut the video in the right place, and so I ended up doing all of this manually still. However, I like a plugin that summarizes articles for you on the internet. So I'm a big fan of Medium, and I receive their newsletter along with other newsletters. And whenever I click on an interesting article, I don't want to read the whole thing. I can have a plugin that summarizes it for me. And then if interested, I can read more. I also use a lot of presentation tools like Gamma. I don't know if you heard of Gamma. Is also great for doing presentations. So this is really cool to use it with a simple prompt to generate a presentation. You can also, sometimes I go to ChatGPT, get a full structure of a presentation, put it in Gamma, and now I have a visually presentable presentation in seconds. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting world we live in these days with all these tools speeding up and making our life much easier. So I'm very, very grateful. The only concern would be like about is the society ready for all of this? You also mentioned about only the best in each field will survive, and I wonder what do we do with all the other people who don't find something useful to do or something useful to contribute? How to find, something purposeful, something useful. And especially that every day we're seeing more and more jobs getting automated. And now the promise of AGI is luring around the corner. People saying within a year or two we're going to have a fully capable autonomous agent that is pretty much, you can hire an AI for a few $100 a month, and the AI will replace a kind of a college graduate level employee. I wonder how we can find purpose anymore.
I would almost argue that it should be better and easier to find purpose, because I think in some ways we've probably employed, as an example, too many software engineers. Because if there are, let's say 20%, 30%, 40% of those that could be replaced by AI, I would say they probably didn't find their calling, right? Whatever, because at least in my opinion, the current level of AI, the current level of code completion from GitHub Copilot, for example, is pretty poor. It's quite good at basic stuff, boilerplate stuff, things like that. But I would say if that's what your job is, you probably just haven't found the right vocation. You haven't found your passion. And so I think that jobs are going to shift a lot. We're going to, there's going to be a big, a big change. But I think it also gives us a lot of potential to really find jobs for people, find vocations for people that actually are their true calling.
How do you go about that though? How do you go about finding your calling?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know, to be fully honest. I think that I've been quite fortunate. Lots of other people have been fortunate that they stumble upon it in a way. I stumbled upon programming through life science, right? I had to control a benchtop instrument, and it was just a problem I had to solve in front of me in order to finish my master's, basically. So I stumbled upon it randomly and got really lucky. I think we need to rethink how we educate potentially, because especially in the UK, we do specialize quite early. So I stopped, for example, history and geography and music when I was about 14. I don't know if that's a good idea, right? I don't know whether we should be introducing people to more varied things sooner, more, maybe the sort of Nordic style of education, a little bit more of problem solving, rather than this is, a particular curriculum and this is a particular subject, more broad topics of, we're going to launch a cafe. How do we do it? And maybe that needs some IT, maybe that needs some food science, maybe that needs some operations, some finance, and give people exposure to more things and help them stumble on their sort of callings. Maybe we need to work harder to try to expose people to things, to give them exposure to different things in a more structured manner, rather than making people stumble upon them. I'm probably not the right person to answer, but I do think that the education system could change a lot. We also need to rethink how we educate people for, in the age of AI now, with deep fakes, with online scams, with, you have to be really careful about your data. Often the weakest link in security are the people. So we have to educate people to use these tools responsibly, not to trust everything they see, to have a critical eye. So I think there's so much room for improvement in the education system. And I would hope that a reform there would lead to people finding their calling and, a better distribution of the workforce, essentially. People focusing on more value add activities, things that they enjoy, things that are good for society as well. Because I think there are a lot of people that work jobs that they don't enjoy, unfortunately. I'm very fortunate that I love what I do, but a lot of people don't. So
Yeah.
we need to find a way. We need to find a way to have more people to enjoy their life and enjoy their jobs. And maybe AI can even help us, right? Maybe AI can even have creative discussions with us, give us ideas, expose us to new things. I don't have the answer, unfortunately. I wish I did.
I think you answered beautifully, and I agree. And personally, I'll share a little bit of my personal journey, because I had like 15 years of experience in marketing, and I enjoy marketing. Even with my current role as a business consultant for the SBDC, I have a full calendar I meet business owners on a daily basis, and I kind of enter their lives and know their aspirations and try to help them lift off their business. And I enjoy doing that greatly. But I also started to develop more interest, especially with the AI, into a deeper philosophical questions and big, deep questions. And I happen to have a lot of my friends are professors of philosophy, and I hang out with a lot of people who are interested in that space. And I kind of developed an interest there. However, I still don't know how to be useful in that space. I know how to be useful in marketing, but I don't know how to be useful in the philosophy part, especially that I am, I don't have the credentials to be a professor or anything of that nature. But I could pursue that, but then to what goal, to what end? So this is something that I struggle with sometimes. And I'm like, oh, maybe I just should focus on business. But there's a lot of mysteries in the universe that philosophy could help uncover, even mysteries within ourselves, like know thyself, right? So sometimes I wonder if I should, pose kind of my interest in philosophy and focus on what pays the bills versus, like have a more balanced approach, or maybe go all in on philosophy. So what's your advice?
I think my experience is my experience, and I think it was Steve Jobs that said it's always easy to connect the dots looking back, right? So for me, it's easy to look back and think, I studied life science, natural science, which gave me a sort of problem solving mindset and let me understand, physics and maths and things like that. And then I was exposed to programming, which, I instantly fell in love with. And I managed to combine life science and programming. I, bumped in, met someone at university that ended up being a co-founder, met my other co-founder through him, who had the experience of insurance. It's very easy to look back and think, it was all meant to be. But I do think that people that get different experiences, both geographically and also sort of within different markets, different jobs, they do think differently. And I think that it helps me a lot when I'm programming, for example, because because of my background, my scientific background. I think I approach problems a bit differently sometimes, and maybe a bit creative in that sense in the programming domain. So I think that often when you find things that you love, your different the different elements. I also love spoken languages, which also means in a way I love programming languages, and each one of them is almost like a different spoken language. easier to learn for me than real spoken languages, but nevertheless, they share some things. And I find that the intersect of all of them is when I'm really excited, when I'm learning a new programming language, solving a new problem in a new industry, like insurance for me. That's when I'm, really motivated and really enjoy it. So for you, I would say, is it possible to combine? Is it possible to get more philosophers? You've had some philosophers on the show already. Is it possible to get more of them, have more provoking discussions, and can that become the intersection of marketing and philosophy essentially? That's how I would personally approach it. Yeah,
that's a great answer. Thank you.
What are some of the philosophical questions that are occupying your mind at the minute? There are a lot with AI for sure.
I'm going to ask you one question right now, and this probably would be a great question to end this conversation. I know that software engineers don't like to anthropomorphize AI, but the question is there anybody there? Like, could a system become because in the end of the day, our brain is a complex system, and according to the integrated information theory, it says that when a system becomes complex enough where the information is kind of integrated in multi-layered way, it gives rise to kind of a conscious experience. Do you think this is a possibility? I know that you've been referring to them as tools. Will they always be tools in your eyes?
Yes. So I am very cautious not to attribute kind of human properties to the models. It is quite common in the media to do that. I think it can also be helpful in some ways. It's a bit of an oversimplification sometimes, and I think it's just what we tend to do as humans. So even like the hallucinations, right? That's quite a human state, right? It's not really a machine state, right? So I think as well, because I understand the models reasonably well. I'm not a machine learning engineer. I'm not a machine learning researcher, but Andrew has imparted a lot of information and expertise over to me in the last few years, and having exposure to the models and finding the edge cases and the rough edges does mean that you understand them better, I think. And so hallucination for me is just what it's been designed to do in a way, because it's taken almost all the internet, almost all the data on the internet, almost all the text on the internet, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They've tried to filter out the bad and the ugly the best they can. And it's actually an amazing feat that they've essentially designed a compression algorithm that's managed to take terabytes or more of data on the internet and compress it into a model that's maybe around 100 gigabytes. And you can actually ask it almost anything, and it will answer pretty well, which essentially means it's compressed the internet into some form of knowledge or some form of memory, some form of some representation.
A hive mind or something.
And that is in itself incredible. But it's only been designed to give the most probable next token, the most probable next word to complete the sentence, complete the paragraph. So it's going to give realistic answers, but not truthful. And they often are truthful because of this incredible compression algorithm, essentially, that's put all of the information into the model's weights and biases. But when it hallucinates, for me, that is quite expected in some ways, because it's a good compression algorithm, but it can't store everything on the internet inside itself, right? By definition, you're losing some information going from terabytes or more down to gigabytes. So for me, it's not that surprising. And so I think because I think like that, and because I see them like that, and I see the weaknesses in them sometimes, I think I also don't want to give them human. I don't want to attribute human properties to them. And I think I'm quite like a logical person in some ways. I'm like, if we can power it on and we can power it off, then that's not intelligence. It's just a tool. I think it was Arthur Clarke, was it, that said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But indistinguishable isn't the same as being, right? So it might present itself to us as if it's intelligent, as if it's sentient, as if it can do all these things, magic in a way, but it's just it's just how it appears to us. It's just exhibiting all the properties and all the behaviors, if you like, of that. But I don't think it is that personally. That's at least my view. I think if we can turn it off, then it's just an incredibly powerful tool. I think we need to be more careful about the applications and right, and having it in the hands of bad actors and what they can do with it, making really addictive social media and whatever else, influence and election campaigns and all this stuff. I think that's the thing we need to be worried about. For me personally, I don't worry about the technology itself per se.
Yep. So this is what I'm interested in. This is what occupies my mind a lot of the times. I enjoy conversations with people with philosophy background, and even I enjoy asking random people who are not in the field. Perhaps your answer is pretty amazing to me, even if you don't have philosophy background. It's just that the idea that we are asking these questions, the curiosity to discover what's beyond, is just fascinating to me. So, and I want to thank you so much, Alex, for having this conversation with me. I think it's been a beautiful 50 minutes now. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Naja. It's been great.